Today we're going to be looking at the opening, the Danish gambit, and the Danish gambit's probably one of the most aggressive openings in the game. White starts out by sacrificing two of its pawns in exchange for quick development and very open attacking lines right off the bat. And the opening hasn't been studied as much as other openings, so it's still debated whether this is a good opening or not, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the lines and actually look at a famous game that was played by it and kind of look at how White was able to exploit Black's lack of development for a pretty easy win. So we'll get into it. It starts out pawn to e4, Black responds pawn to e5, and White offers up his first sacrifice at pawn to d4, and when Black takes, White sacrifices another pawn here on c3, and when Black takes, White is going to play bishop to c4. Now obviously, as you can tell, at any time White could have taken these, but this is part of the Danish gambit. And right off the bat, White is starting to attack. He's already put his bishop on c4, eyeing the f7 square, which is a huge weakness for Black, and is going to try to exploit that later on in the game. Black usually continues to just keep capturing pawns, trying to go up more material, and White is going to come in and finally take this pawn, and as he does, you can see that White's already started attacking with a lot of his pieces on the Black's king side. And as you can see, all of Black's pieces on his back rank have not moved. He has no piece beyond the 7th rank here, and White already has two bishops in place, and he has a nice little center control with his white pawn here. So White is down 2 points in material, but has made up for it quite a bit in development. So a lot of times you'll see Black continue with bishop to b4 check, trying to gain a tempo as he develops his pieces. From here, White can simply move his knight to c3 blocking. If at any time Black captures, White can recapture with his bishop. Keep in mind when you do play this opening, bishops are an integral part of the game, so you definitely don't want to sacrifice your bishops early on, because from the beginning, those are kind of your power pieces. In any open game, you want bishops over knights, and in a closed game with pawns all over the board, you'd rather have knights as they can kind of move around. But since this game is obviously open, we've already taken off 3 of our pawns. We definitely want to be using bishops and not knights. So that's why we are going to put our knight and block it instead of putting our bishop and blocking it, because if we were to do that and we sacrifice, then our attacking lines just aren't as good, and Black's up in material. So from here, it's actually said that Black's best move is pawn to d6, basically opening up an area for his other bishop, and then White's going to go ahead and challenge this bishop here on b4, and when he does that, it's going to do 2 things. First thing, he's attacking this bishop, and the second thing, he has unleashed a powerful attack on this f7 square. We have already doubled up on this long diagonal, looking at this big attack on the Black's king. So a lot of times from here, Black will go ahead, instead of losing tempo, he will go ahead and take a piece. Since he is up in material, anytime you're up in material, you'd like to sacrifice all the way down, because your advantage becomes more clear. So he will go ahead and take, and White's going to go ahead and take with his bishop on c3. And if you look at it, White has a huge spatial advantage here. We are attacking the f7 square, we're attacking the g7 square, and if you look at it, White has a lot of different attacks that he has. He has good center control with his pawn here. He has some great attacks coming to the king side. And black really has done nothing for his development. So you can definitely see that although down 2 points, you can easily make up for that in your attacking prowess. So a lot of times you'll see black develop. We can just look at if knight were to try to develop the king side, give the king a little bit more room. Anytime white can come in here and capture, and black can't do a whole lot. His king's going to be moving, it's going to be out of position, and for the rest of the game, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a famous game played with the Danish gambit and kind of look at how it was played at the top level, kind of look at some of the themes, see how they match up, and see some of the ideas that they had when they played it. This is a game by Joseph Henry Blackburn versus Day, and Joseph Henry was playing the white pieces, and so we will go ahead and get into it. Starts out, as we said, pawn to e4, black responds, pawn e5. White offers up his first pawn, and black accepts. White offers up another pawn, black accepts, and then white gets into the Danish gambit opening, and black takes another piece, and he is now up 2 points of material. White takes the pawn, and now black tries to develop, as we've said before, checking, trying to gain a tempo. White's going to defend with his knight. It's not really the most important piece, so we're going to block with that one right now. Black's going to go ahead and try to start to free up some of his new pieces, so he's going to move pawn to d6. White's going to challenge and start a huge attack on the king side with his double queen bishop here. Black's going to take, white's going to take the bishop, the attack we talked about before. In this game, black actually chose a different move than I showed you. He chose to start to get his queen involved first. I actually don't like this as much for black, simply because white can continue development, as we'll see in this game with, after we take on f7 and force the king to move, then we can bring our knight into the game, forcing the queen to move, and also gaining a tempo as we develop. Now, when the queen moved, the queen wants to stay active, so he moves to a better location so he can attack this piece. But white's not too worried. He's going to go ahead and castle. And from this position, you can see that black is in a world of hurt. He's definitely up in material, although not by much. At this point, he's only up by 1 pawn. We have 2 pawns. He has 3 of ours. But all of our pieces are involved in the attack on the white side. We have a huge attack. Black's king is already moved. This rook's not going anywhere. This rook's not going anywhere. He hasn't moved either of his knights. Our rook's already connected. That's a huge thing. Anytime in an opening you want to connect your rooks. And so you can already tell that black's in a lot of trouble. So we'll go ahead and continue the game here. Black tries to free up his minor piece, his knight, and try to get this bishop out of here. White responds back to c4. He's not too worried about it. He knows that black can't do much. Black's going to continue to try to develop some of his pieces and use them in the attack. And white's going to go ahead and start pushing up his pawn. Black's going to go ahead and take that pawn, some of the center control. White's going to go ahead and take that, and you're going to see a sacrifice in the middle. Black's going to take. White's going to take with his bishop, and white still has both of his bishops, which is a key concept in the Danish gambit from what we talked about. Black's going to try to use his queen to attack this bishop, but for the most part, everything he does now is kind of futile. So white's going to go ahead and defend that bishop with his rook, getting it on this open e-file that will be used later. And black's going to try to bring his knight into the game. He had his knight on the h-file. Usually a knight on the edge isn't very helpful, so he tries to bring his knight into the game, and white's going to go ahead and just take another piece. And from here, white would go on to win pretty easily once he got his other pieces involved. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely check out more. Please subscribe.